Welcome to the Free and Open Mind Vcast, where who are you?
And what is your passion?
I'm Hardy Brooklyn.
And I'm Michelle Wild. Thank you for joining us.
The last episode that we have on YouTube's is an episode that we did with the financial sharptress, Galit. And I want to encourage everyone to listen to that episode. There's a lot of really good financial advice for normal, down-to-earth people. And I'm also kind of going to advise everybody that for the next couple of months, the financial sharptress is offering a super duper discount to Hardy Brooklyn listeners, viewers, subscribers, and supporters. And in order to get that promo code in more directions, you can either listen to the other episode and then go look at Hardy Brooklyn's newsletter or look for a blog post on hardybrooklyn.com.
We want to give a shout out to our sponsor, headshop.com, for all your vape needs and pipes and all kinds of smoke paraphernalia.
And as well as vaping the crazy nicotine vapes that people are doing these days. So we've also talked about, in the past bunch of episodes, boundaries, consent, limiting beliefs, different kinds of things that people can work at to change their perception of the world around them and move forward in a happier way. And today I felt that, and we had a discussion earlier, that it's really important for us to kind of qualify to you as our viewer that we've actually gone through this change ourselves. And I've gone through it multiple times, Michelle's gone through it multiple times, to help you figure out a path and understand that it is attainable even under the situations that we went through, because my change was really hard. I had a lot of opposition from everyone in my inner circle. And that being said, I want to really move to the meat of it now, and I want to kind of like talk to Michelle and hear from Michelle about how she took the constructs that were upon her and the life that she was leading and going down and turned it into something that was more emotionally, mentally fulfilling for her.
Yes. So my journey started, for my changes, started probably around the age of 24. I had grown up in a really traumatic childhood. I had a single mother who we didn't get along, and there was a lot of strife in the house, and I projected a lot of stuff onto my sister and hated my sister. We're now really good friends now. And I was emotionally detached, and when I think about my childhood, I don't have any memories or any good memories or any emotions attached to it. And I just sort of checked out at a certain point. It was probably like around 7 or 8 years old that I just completely checked out. And I just was sort of on like, just like robot mode. And
so let's pause that.
Yeah.
So you're talking about checking out.
Yeah.
Can we elaborate and kind of explain to the viewers so that they can kind of have an understanding of what it means? Because the way that I look at checkout and the way that like my friends, some of my other friends look at it, it's very different.
I checked out emotionally, and I completely detached myself. So it was just like I was just a body, and I was just going through the motions of what I had to do: go to school, be a daughter and be a granddaughter, and just really, like I said, like an empty shell of a person. Completely an empty shell. And like I said, when I think back to those times, I have no connection to me being a kid whatsoever. Absolutely none.
So if we look at that, that's something that has probably left a really good limiting belief with you.
Yeah.
And by checking out, you kind of practiced and worked really hard at suppressing positive and negative emotions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I only experienced in my childhood only negative emotions. I had a lot of, not only from my mother, but also from my grandparents. And so I remember that any kind of emotion I would always, if I stood up for myself or said something, I was always knocked down for that. And because I was a little different than everybody else in my family, they thought I was doing that intentionally to get their attention, to rattle their cage. And they didn't validate me as a person being different and being a person that grew up in New York City as opposed to where my family grew up in Israel a long time ago. So they didn't really understand like the stuff that I was going through. And so they would always call me crazy, and not in a good way. They'd like call me mentally crazy. They would make fun of how short I was all the time. They would make fun of like, you know, if I was upset or you know, I wasn't happy with the way things were going, they would like laugh at me and say, like, they wouldn't justify my, you know, my feelings in any way, shape or form. You know, the one feeling I did have was just anger, and they would just like, they took it personally. You know, they didn't say, hey, listen, what's wrong, Michelle? Like, what's going on? They'd just be like, oh, well, she's just doing that to aggravate us.
So it sounds to me like you grew up in a household that had really bad boundaries,
Yeah.
and there was a lack of respect for each other.
Yeah.
And moving forward, you've been able to overcome that because you don't really act that way in public or in private anymore.
No.
So how are you able to, because those boundaries and that consent and all of those situations that you were seeing at home is the exact same thing that happens on TV.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know.
In sitcoms and in dramas and in
Yeah.
comedies, no matter what it is, those same negative things are being reinforced. So what did you do, and how did you take that baby step to start changing your limiting beliefs, your preconceived notions, your constructs, all of the stuff that's constantly being put against us, whether it's consciously or subconsciously? A lot of people don't know that they're doing really bad things because they've been doing it all along.
Right.
And they've been doing boundaries all along. They've been doing respect all along. They've been doing all of these things. They've been just doing them really, really badly. So now when they go ahead and do it to you, or to their spouse, or to their partner, or their lover, and they're doing it badly, they don't understand why the person's getting mad.
Well, I was the only person in the family that like, reacted that way. Everybody else kind of complied in my family. My cousins, my sister, everybody just sort of went with the flow, and I didn't. And my mom used to say, like, oh, you're just rebelling against me. And then I realized I wasn't rebelling. I just heard a different drum beat.
Right.
You know, that was it. I just was a different kind of person. And, you know, at the age of 24, I really did a lot of self-inflicting kind of pain, not cutting or anything, but just doing a lot of drugs because it just added to me being disconnected. And that was the only time I actually felt anything, felt happiness or felt anything. And I was abusing myself, having sex with lots of men because I didn't really feel like I had any worth. You know, and then I interpreted sex as love because nobody talked to me. Nobody talked to me about sex. Nobody talked to me about relationships. Nobody talked to me about money or budgeting. My mom was just like, oh, you'll just get married and that'll be the end of it and you'll be good. You know, somebody will take care of you. And that's not what I wanted. I mean, I really, you know, by the time I was 16, I understood I didn't want to have kids. I wanted to be an artist, and I just wanted to have be free to do what I wanted to do. And so by the time I was 24, you know, the drugs had become really, really bad, and I had quit the drugs. I was living in another state. I came back to New York, and I had some bullshit job. And I remember going into the health food store, and I picked up a book called Rebirthing. And it completely changed my life. And that was the first step to change. And the one paragraph in it said that that Jesus was a man that worked on earth, and the purpose of him was to show you that everybody has that same potential. Everybody has the same potential to be enlightened. Every single person. Jesus is no different than anybody else. I mean, the only thing that's different is that he's worshipped the way he is, but his true gift to us is that we're all enlightened human beings, and we have that potential. And so that was my first step to becoming that enlightened person.
And that's really good, because if we look at it as we all have the opportunity to become an enlightened individual. Yeah. It doesn't matter when it happens. It's okay if that enlightened individual time happens when you're 60, 50, 40, 30. Yeah, it's great if it happens at 20, but I look at it as I don't think I was really enlightened probably until I was 49 years old.
Yeah. Well, it's a journey, not a race. It's a total journey. And the only way to be enlightened, I mean, it's just like Buddha says, you have to suffer. I mean,
well, you don't have to suffer.
Well, I mean, it's part of the process. You know what I mean? It's part of the process. And so, like, in order for me to understand what sunshine is, I have to understand what darkness is.
Correct.
So it's a secular thing. So, you know, I had gone through all the darkness. I had gone through all that stuff, and I was ready to be happy. You know, that was my ultimate goal. I just wanted to be happy, and I wanted to be a whole person, and I wanted to not fake my feelings anymore. I didn't want to, like, fake having to laugh or, like, fake having to smile. I wanted to be genuine, and I wanted it to be real, and I didn't want to be angry anymore. I was so angry at being, like, you know, I didn't get real parents, I didn't get the love I wanted, I didn't get any of that, and I was just so angry, and I was angry at everybody on the planet.
And all of those anger things that it sounds to me like were not necessarily angry at them. You were angry because you had set an expectation that was not met by those individuals.
Yeah. So I started taking therapy with a person that was actually in the book. They listed all these therapists, and I found one. And the first time we talked on the phone, he lived in Queens. I was living in Long Island at the time. And he's like, okay, we'll start our first session. And he said, I was living with a friend that had a car. He goes, well, you can drive or take, you know, the train. And he goes, if you drive, I'll make sure there's a stop in front. He goes, how are you going to, I said, how are you going to do that? He goes, I'm going to manifest it for you. I was like, oh, thank you. I'm like, yeah, okay, dude, whatever you say. So I ended up taking the train. And needless to say, when I got there was a spot in front. And he said, I saved the spot for you. and I didn't get it. Like, I just, like, it was clueless to me. So the first few months of therapy, all I did was cry. He gave me that space to be upset, to be disappointed, to be, you know, that I didn't have the parents, I didn't get the love, and I just cried and cried, and that's all I did. And
that's really important. There are a lot of people that I work with, whether it's life coaching or that I was talking to in the past, where we as a society feel that crying is not okay. Crying is an emotion. Crying is a natural thing for you to do when you feel somewhere. And it helps the body release. It helps create chemical emotions, physical things, a lot of things that really happen. And one of the things that I find interesting is I was working with a client, and he's a man, and he said that, like, I never thought that, like, you were going to make fun of me when I started to, like, whimper on the phone. And I'm like, why would I do that? I'm like, dude, go get yourself a tissue, take a deep breath, and cry it out.
Yeah, crying is like, I mean, I tell people that too, the submissives, and, you know, when they're upset or they're just whatever, I said, like, just cry. Go into the bathroom, take a hot shower, take a bath, and just cry and let it out, and you know what, and then move on from there. So, so I did all the crying, it was amazing, and then the one session that really blew my mind, because we would talk and then we would do meditation, was he had me picture this beautiful place, and it was a field of flowers, sunflowers, and he said, I want you to picture yourself as a child, and I want you to give yourself a hug, and give it everything that you never got, and give yourself permission to be happy. That shit was gut-wrenching. I mean, it was really, really a difficult thing, really emotional, but from that point on, I started all over. And one of my tasks was that I had to go talk to my mother. And I remember the night that I was going to talk to her. And we actually were driving in the car together to the diner, and there was a van in front of us that said, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. So when I went and talked to my mother, she, of course, you know, took no responsibility for anything, which is fine. And I started my life all over again. At 25 years old, I started like I was a newborn baby. And I just, you know, started figuring out what I really wanted to do in my life and how I was going to actually do that. And I wanted to be an artist, and I took, you know, I did a lot of different things, a lot of odd jobs, and my main goal was to be happy and to be an artist. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So you know, it's been like one of the things that I like to stress is that you need to be really kind to yourself when you're going through change, and not punch yourself over the head. Oh my God, all this didn't happen. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a real slow process. And part of the change that I realize is meeting new people that come into your life that are in line with your change and being positive. And these people come into your life to teach you lessons, either come in for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And a lot of people came into my life and really, you know, it might have been one sentence they said, and it completely changed my life and opened up my heart to something else. So I started meeting different people that were more aligned to, you know, me being happy and finding myself. And slowly I moved out of Long Island. I moved into the city. I was doing a waitress job to pursue to support myself as an artist, and I had to figure out a way to be an artist and make a living. And that sort of led me down the road to go back to photography, to go to school in the 30s as a photographer. And I did photography for 20 years, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it. I loved the fact that I empowered people, and I realized, in life that people end up doing stuff in life that they didn't get as a childhood. So here I was empowering these women, and it was just amazing. So I got to give them everything I didn't get. And it just completely changed my life. And then, career-wise, everything was great. But then my, personal life was like a fucking mess. So I was still dating guys that were my father, and still craving that stuff from my father because I was abandoned by him, and still, struggling with that. And it wasn't until my last relationship that was really traumatic that changed my life. And I'm so thankful for that. I went through some extremely abusive behavior from him, and I realized it's because the same way my dad was, I just wanted him to love me, and I was willing to sacrifice everything to get that. When I realized in the end that the only person that really can love you is you.
And that's a really good definition of the journey, so people can kind of take away key points of actions that you did or that you kind of took.
Right.
To move yourself forward, and that you realize that all of those notions that you might have had and those people around you might not have been the best for you or have your best interest. And my story is very similar,
right.
Except it happened way later in life. I went through life and I was relatively happy. I was this druggy, and I think
thought you were happy.
I thought I was happy. I relatively really did sincerely thought I was happy, and then as I started talking to more people, they're like, wow, you've been doing drugs since you've been 10 years old. And I'm like, that's a long time. I mean, I've been smoking weed this year in June for 40 years.
Wow.
And I'm 50 years old.
Wow.
And most of the people,
me too.
And most of the people in my life didn't know that when I was younger. So I was happy, but I was not really happy. I was happy in a perceived notion of what my happiness was. And as time went on, as I had children, as I got exposed to different things and different types of people that were more outside of the circle, I felt comfortable as a person. And there are things that I like to do. And it took me a long time to confront the fear of my parents.
So do you think you were doing the drugs so you could be happy, or you give that the illusion to everybody else on the outside that you were happy?
I think it was a combination. I think I was doing the drugs to self-medicate because I was ADD, hyperactive, all of these things, and by doing weed, it kind of scaled it all back. And it also took a lot of the anxiety away.
Right.
Because I do notice that that's the first thing that comes back when I stop smoking, and I have to go into a mental process of dealing with it, not being that. And then we fast forward, and then I'm like, wait, I got a medical card, I've been doing these things, I've had a bunch of successful businesses that I've sold, I've got a wife, I've got a kid, I've got a really good life. And everybody around me kept criticizing my life. They were not allowing me to be happy. In the house, you've done these things with your kids haven't gone to summer camp, and all these other things, comparing me to constructs in society that frankly didn't work for me. Yeah, my kids didn't go to sleepaway camp, but we went to Europe for a month, or 2 or 3 weeks every year. And we went and visited countries, we did things as a family. And they went to Boy Scout camp, and then they went to day camp, so they went to other types of camp. It wasn't necessarily the life that every other American had. And because I wasn't living that life, and because my lifestyle as I got older didn't represent that of a normal parent.
Well, you were giving your kids everything you didn't get.
Correct.
Right? And also all those stuff you didn't get, so you get to do it with your kids. You didn't get to experience all that.
We did travel a lot with my family.
Okay.
My family was very good at cross-country. America. America.
And that's not Europe, though.
Right. There's a very big difference.
Yeah.
And I started to think about it, and I had a conversation with my pain management doctor. And he was like, listen, you've had a medical card forever. Like, you're one of the first people that got it in New York State. You're in the ketamine program. We're putting you in the ketamine pain program. And you're a functional drug user. You're not an abuser. He said, I've known you for 5 years. And I've never, ever, ever seen you abuse any drug. Now, we have different opinions of that, but let's go with the doctor's opinion. So when I look at those things, and I think about those things, and I say, wait a second. And then he fundamentally got me to make a decision to sit down and have a conversation with my parents. Because every time I went to a family event, I would be triggered. I would be triggered. I would be criticized. All of these other things would happen to me. And it would be like, hey, you can't smoke. Like, I'd have to hide it. Like, I would need the weed because either my back was hurting or my hip was hurting, which ultimately was probably from me not being able to realize things with my mom. Right. So when I go to my parents' house, I'd want to smoke, and I'd have to, like, beg my kids to go for a walk around the block with me. I'm like, someone, please go with me. So that put me in a weird position because I didn't feel 100% comfortable with that situation. So I made a decision that I was going to confront them. But I had also decided I was going through a...
Wait, it's funny you say you confront them.
And I also decided that I was going to go through a transition in life. Okay. Where I went from being a guy that wore a jacket and tie to work every day and primarily serviced corporate America in the technology and business space. My clients were GE, Siemens, Con Ed, LIPA, PSE&G. It didn't matter where you were. I worked with a lot of electrical companies on infrastructure design. It wasn't fulfilling me. It was making me miserable. The projects I was doing, whatever it was, it's a very bad industry. Let's leave it at that. And for my mojo. So I decided that I was going to become a model. A nude model. So why not? I figured I would do it. And I did.
But before you continue that, you were talking about confronting your parents?
Correct. So,
but why confronting them with?
With what I was doing, because my parents kind of heard that I was doing the body painting.
You were going to tell them, or are you going to be like, oh, I'm doing this because of you guys?
No, I was going to tell them. So Thanksgiving, a couple of years ago, I said, listen, I really need some time to talk to you. When like everybody's here, we can go in the other room and sit down and have a conversation. And I just needed some really important things I kind of need to tell you. And I kind of want to do it when the rest of the family's around so that the wrath on me is not as bad.
Okay.
So I sat them down and I said, and I decided that the easiest thing to do would be hand them my medical marijuana card.
Right.
The look of disappointment on my mom's face. The lack of belief. And I'm like, hey, I've been smoking since I've been a kid. No, you haven't. Well, you know what? Really, I haven't. And the lack of admitting to it. And then the body painting, the modeling. And they were...
But did you explain to them why you were smoking?
I did.
Okay.
And
did they understand that? I mean, like, is it any different than taking a Xanax?
So in a lot of people's minds, even today, there's a big difference.
Because one's legal and one isn't.
No. It's not that. That's not the difference. Because in New York, they're both legal.
Right. So what's the difference?
The difference is one's a plant that grows that has a bad reputation and a bad connotation in the construct of society. And that script is in the process of being changed.
Yeah.
But when you turn TV on, and when you look at the news, it's about the evil drug dealers.
Right.
It's about all of these people that are selling drugs that, frankly, should be legal.
Right.
So having that discussion with my parents, and the answers were like, I don't want that shit on my property, I don't want that shit in my cars, and I'm just sitting there like, I've cracked up enough of your cars.
It's already been on your property.
Right, it's already been on your property. You know, I used to be one of the largest distributors on Nassau County, and I was selling out the window of my room.
I mean, I think people, though, out there would be like, well, you should respect your parents', wishes and their boundaries, too.
So I do, and I made a conscious decision that I would respect their boundaries, and I wouldn't do it in front of them, but I wasn't going to leave their property.
Right.
So I said, listen, I can go sit on the back deck. If there's nobody out there that opposes, I could smoke my joint, my bowl, whatever it might be.
Right.
And I did that. I consciously made that decision. And I went outside and I did that. And because of the anger or the disappointment that brought to my family, it got to the point where certain family members would send their kids out and then yell at me for smoking in front of their kids. I'm like, you knew I was out there smoking.
Right.
I'm not responsible for what you don't want me to watch your kid. but yet you still send them out, so whatever. So I basically had to take 2 years off from my family. A legit full 2 years I took off. I set a boundary. I said, Mom, Dad, brothers, everybody, I am not going to put myself in a situation where people are going to criticize me and put me down for my beliefs that are different than theirs.
Right.
And that's all it was, is I had a different belief system than my parents.
Yeah, same with me. You're just a different person.
Correct.
Right? Exactly.
And my belief system, it doesn't matter what it was. It was the fact that you don't need to ridicule me, you don't need to criticize me, you don't need to tell me I'm not living up to your expectations, because you're giving me those limiting beliefs.
Right.
And as I had that conversation with them, I started to fundamentally change. Because now it wasn't a conversation with a therapist, it wasn't a conversation with a coach, it wasn't
Right.
a conversation with a friend, it was me taking that action.
Right.
And for the next couple of months, for the rest of the Jewish holidays and Hanukkah and Christmas and all those other holidays and Thanksgiving, I can't believe you're not going. My kids are like, oh, we're all going. I can't believe you're not going. I'm like, no, I'm going to go to a club. I don't need to be there. I don't need to put myself in that situation. And then after time, my parents started to realize that I was actually a different person. And as we went over different things of conflict between us, they were able to see more of my side.
Right, so this is my take, because the same thing with my family, very similar. It's like, you don't have to like what I do and all that other stuff, but you have to respect it.
Correct.
Just like I respect you. I don't like what you do, I don't agree anything you do, but I respect you, and you could do that. You know what I mean? You don't have to try to inflict your, beliefs on me, and I'm not trying to do the same thing on you. But the other thing is, I am a product of you, like your parents.
Right.
You made me. I mean, so who are you really mad at? Me or yourself?
And most people are mad at their own disappointment. They're not actually mad
right.
at you. So
but that's their own expectations. But you
Correct.
just right. You put an expectation on me. I didn't do that. You did.
Yep. I was expected to have a house and have all these things
right.
that I never even really wanted. Like my
right.
parents were like,
but
what do you own? I'm
me.
like, I am so proud of the bicycle and the camping equipment I have that. I'm like, wow, like people are like, oh, what do you own? I'm like, I have a really nice bike to get around in case there's a problem. Like, I can always travel. I always have transport. And my friend's like, well, I have a house that's worth $120,000. And I'm like, well, what's that going to do for you when there's no oil or electricity? Like,
right.
my bicycle will get me around. And to get back to what we were talking about, with my parents, by putting those boundaries in place and not telling them they couldn't behave a certain way,
right.
by just telling myself that if they acted a certain way, I would remove myself from the situation. What it did was it started changing the script
right.
in everyone's head.
Right.
So now it was, Hardy showed up last to the party, or to the house, or to the event, which is usually not true, or I was given the wrong time, or I'm taking mass transit.
Right.
Why do you need to yell at me? Like, you knew what train I was on. You knew I was going to be here. There was no misinformation. But that script started to change slowly. And what changed in the script first, at least for my brothers, was the criticism of me for living the life that I wanted to live.
Right.
So what changed? What was the script that changed in your family's mind first?
Nothing. They haven't changed.
They haven't?
They won't change.
But your sister changed.
My sister was never like that.
Okay.
My sister and I, once I got past being angry at her, my sister, I was basically my sister's mother. So we were really, really close. And she's not like them. She is not like my family. My parents my dad, he doesn't care. His whole thing is he just doesn't care. But my mother, no, she's still stuck in having these expectations of what she thought I was going to be.
So let's end it there for now. We're going to
Okay.
take a quick break, and we're going to continue right after this break with talking about what happens when the people around you are incapable of changing. Because there are people around me that changed and that were incapable of changing, and there are people around Michelle that potentially changed that are incapable, and there are people that were totally incapable of changing. So we're going to take a break because we're wrapping up on the amount of time, and it's going to get like, we don't want to make you listen too much. So I'd like to remind everyone to go to hardybrooklyn.com, look for the Financial Structures blog post to get your 25% off discount of her workshops online. She does really good online group workshops. And I want to reiterate that our sponsor, headshop.com, is helping to make all of these podcasts happen for you.
I'm Michelle Wild.
I'm Hardy Brooklyn.
Who are you?
And what is your true passion?
Welcome, and we'll see you later. Free and open mind podcast.
Thank you.